seems very likely connected to the massive Somali fraud ring that was just exposed in her district in Minnesota. It's
Good news. Somalians in Minnesota are pretending to have autism to steal your taxpayer dollars.
The Somali, Minnesota daycare fraud scheme that's been costing taxpayers probably billions.
I'm about to explain why a 23-year-old YouTuber knocking on doors in Minneapolis got more federal attention in 48 hours than a $1 billion healthcare fraud scheme got in total. A white man in Florida stole $1.3 billion from nursing home patients and walked free after 4 years. Somali daycares in Minnesota got investigated for $250 million in fraud, and suddenly Vice President J.D. Vance, the richest man on earth, the FBI director, and Don Jr. mobilized within 48 hours. If you can't see the pattern yet, don't worry, it gets pretty clear soon. And real quick, I'm Lauren Paritra. If this kind of thing pisses you off, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, because unlike J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, Kash Patel, and Don Jr., who've got billions of dollars, government positions, and daddy's money to amplify their message, I'm just one person with a camera trying to keep track of which grifters are lying to you this week. These guys coordinate within 48 hours to boost a 23-year-old harassing immigrants, and I'm asking you to click a button. Seems pretty fair. So on December 26th, Nick Shirley posted a 42-minute long video about daycare centers in Minnesota.
Hello, we'd like to ask where the money's going. What do you guys think about the fraud that's taking place here in Minnesota?
I don't think anybody is enabling fraud to happen.
Hold Governor Walz accountable for this.
What was this money spent on? 1.26 million. What was that money spent on? There aren't any kids.
Answer the question. Are there children? There's no children inside this building.
He knocked on doors, he filmed empty buildings, and he harassed people at their place of work. He said fraud was happening. The video went viral, and Vice President J.D. Vance, a man who's built his entire political career on disrespecting his wife and children and performing concern for working class Americans while voting against their interests, he shared it. Elon Musk, who is known for amplifying conspiracy theories, he amplified this one to his 200 million followers.
Really, thank you, because what he did by just leveling out the playing field and giving us a platform where we can speak freely, he's not only helped save the United States, he's helping save the United Kingdom, as people are actually able to speak out, whether or not they're able to speak out all across the world. I mean, X is the #1 news source for most countries in the world right now, because that people are able to get that news just straight from their phone without having to go through and get a subscription from the Wall Street Journal to get some propaganda piece. You can get it straight from your phone, and you can follow the people that you trust and that are actually out there in the streets talking to people. So thank you, Elon Musk, because what he's done has helped shape society in many ways, whether it be the election or whether it just be making it so that we can all speak freely here in the United States. And you're seeing the ripple effect across the other countries.
While trying to be a free speech abolitionist, he amplified it. FBI Director Kash Patel, a Trump loyalist, rewarded with one of the most powerful positions in law enforcement, announced he was deploying additional resources to Minnesota because of this video. Don Jr., whose primary qualification is being born, scheduled Shirley for a primetime interview, calling him the young citizen journalist who uncovered this insane Minnesota Somali daycare fraud scheme.
Hey guys, new episode of Triggered going up in 10 minutes. Check it out. I have Nick Shirley, the young citizen journalist who uncovered the Somali, Minnesota daycare fraud scheme that's been costing taxpayers probably billions. Okay, check it out. You're going to want to hear from him directly. We're going live 6 p.m. My Triggered podcast on Rumble. I'll see you then.
Costing American taxpayers billions. So you've got the vice president, the richest man on earth, the FBI director, and a guy whose dad gave him everything, all coordinating to amplify a 23-year-old white boy harassing daycare workers within 48 hours. Quite the response for a Thursday over the holidays. Now, fraud did happen. A nonprofit called Feeding Our Future was involved in a scheme that stole $250 million in federal food aid meant for vulnerable children during COVID. There have been 78 indictments, 57 convictions. Federal prosecutors estimate as much as $9 billion may have been stolen across various schemes. real crimes, real investigations, real consequences, presumably. Here's the thing, though. This story isn't new. NPR News has been reporting on fraud at this child care center for over a decade. KSTP reported on 62 active investigations in January of this year. CBS News did an entire investigation called Luxury Cars and Private Villas. See how Minnesota fraudsters spent millions intended for hungry kids. Local journalists have been knocking on the same doors, following the same money trail, filling the same records requests for years, but their work didn't get 116 million views. Their work didn't get FBI directors to issue a statement within 48 hours. Their work didn't get amplified by the vice president and the richest man on earth. Their work didn't result in Don Jr. booking interviews. So what's so different about Nick Shirley's video? Well, for starters, Minnesota House Speaker Lisa DeMuth admitted on Monday that her Republican caucus directed Shirley to the specific daycare sites featured in his video. So this wasn't exactly independent journalism, which, by the way, calling a commentator or a podcaster a journalist is just straight up journalistic malpractice. He does not have the journalistic integrity for this. And this was a political operation using a broy YouTuber to harass people on camera. And what fine talent. Nick Shirley is 23 years old. His early YouTube videos were pranks. 6 years ago, he filmed himself flying to New York as a 16-year-old without parental consent. Later, he posted, "I tricked TikTokers into auditioning for a Justin Bieber music video."
Justin, put the ball down.
Oh, baby, you should go and love yourself.
Oh!
All those people you just saw think they are auditioning for a role in Justin Bieber's new music video. Little do they know they are being casted by me. Justin Bieber just came out with a new album, which means new music, which means more music videos. However, that is just not the case. This week I made a new company called Next Level Productions. Made a fake website for the company, made a fake email for the company, and I wrote out some of the best emails I have ever written in my entire life and started sending them to as many famous people as I could possible. And I started getting responses like crazy. Even David Spade's manager responded. Hi Mark, nice to meet you. Thanks for reaching out. Could we get some more info on this? Where would it be filmed? Time commitment? Is there a script? Thank you, Whitney. No way. We got David Spade's freaking manager, casting director, emailing me back right now. Oh my gosh, this is too good to be true. However, I was not having the best luck.
Then he shifted to political content, primarily immigration fear-mongering, and his view counts improved considerably. By October, he'd been invited to a White House roundtable about Antifa, which is apparently a thing that we do now. After that event, he went to Portland and filmed himself ripping through medical supplies and toothpaste at what appeared to be a mutual aid setup. What a dick. And one observer noted that he is 23 years old, barely out of diapers, and he thinks this is a big win, but it just makes him look like an asshole. Compelling credentials. University of Minnesota media law professor Jane Kirtley watched Shirley's video and observed that it contains a lot of rhetoric with relatively little substance behind any of it. She noted that Shirley relies on someone identified only as David, who waves documents around without ever providing his full name, research methodology, or how he collected said information. All of these things have earmarks of what most journalists would consider to be, not ethical journalistic practices. And
My name's Nick Shirley.
Nick Shirley.
And oh, we are from ourselves.
Yeah.
Hello, we'd like to ask where the money's going. Look at that. Shut us down.
And Kirtley said, what might be the academic equivalent of somebody saying somebody's a hack? The Guardian also reported that during the last election, Shirley allegedly paid non-U.S. citizens $20 each to carry signs that said, "I love Biden," and then used that footage to claim immigrants support Biden. The kind of thing real journalists do, am I right? And creating stories about fake things instead of reporting on them. Classic. But none of this really matters because Shirley's video did what years of actual journalism couldn't do. It went viral at exactly the right moment, directed by exactly the right political operatives, and amplified by exactly the right power brokers, and framed with exactly the right villain. See, here's what keeps quietly getting omitted. The founder of Feeding Our Future, the nonprofit at the center of the largest fraud case, is a white woman.
So I'm getting a lot of messages about all of this alleged fraud that's happening in Minnesota because it's my home state. The first message I got was from a friend of mine asking me if I'd seen that video that wackadoodle Nick Shirley did going to that quick learning center or whatever it's called. And I'm not saying there's not fraud going on in Minnesota. I'm just saying that some of it seems to be from Nick Shirley. So he goes to this learning center. It's a daycare that has taken millions of dollars. He's knocking, nobody's coming to the door. But it would seem that he's actually at the back door. So here he is at the front door. It's a restaurant called Abdi's Kitchen. That learning center shut down due to multiple violations, none of which I don't believe had to do with fraud. But he doesn't tell his followers that it's actually a restaurant. So I got a bunch of messages about that. And then I got this comment on Instagram, which is a bad faith question. This guy's MAGA. And there has been a huge MAGA push to think about Somali people as fraudsters. Usually what they're referencing is the Feeding Our Future case. And yes, a lot of Somali people were implicated in that case. But what they conveniently leave out is this woman, Amy Bach. In 2016, she founded the nonprofit Feeding Our Future. And in 2020 is when the fraud began. This was at the beginning of the pandemic. This was during DJT's first term. He completely mishandled the pandemic to the point that he loosened oversight on these kinds of programs, allowing claims to get through unverified. And Feeding Our Future claimed that they were giving thousands of meals to children, and they never did. They pocketed that money to the tune of $240 million. In 2022, during Biden's term, Biden's FBI raided the organization, and the organization shut down. There were 78 suspects, Amy Bach, and all of her employees. In March of 2025, 40 of those people, including Amy Bach, were either found guilty or pled guilty. Merrick Garland called it the largest pandemic relief fraud scheme that there ever was. And Biden's administration shut it down. So most of the 78 people who were indicted and the 40 people who were found or pled guilty were Somali, but they were also Bach's employees. She was described as an authoritarian who silenced dissent within her ranks, discouraged scrutiny from state regulators, and cut off people who refused to comply with fudging the numbers. She is the person who created all of this. And now this has become a huge right-wing talking point because of racism and xenophobia. But no one ever mentions her. The person who created it. Is every community has bad actors. That is not an indication of a community as a whole. Unless maybe we're talking about some white women like Amy Bach, who actually was only caught because of Somali whistleblowers. They were the ones who dissented, the ones that Bach iced out. Anyway,
named Amy Bach. She's not Somali. Multiple people of various backgrounds exploited federal programs during a pandemic when oversight was deliberately weakened. But somehow, in this viral retelling, this story became about the Somali community defrauding America, which brings us to the FBI director, Kash Patel, and his response. He announced that even before the public conversation escalated online, the FBI had surged personnel and investigative resources to Minnesota to dismantle large-scale fraud schemes. He called the $250 million case just the tip of the large iceberg. And then he said, this is the interesting part. He said some of those involved are being referred to immigration officials for possible further denaturalization and deportation proceedings where eligible. So fraud investigations that should result in criminal charges for anyone who committed crimes are now being packaged up with little deportation threats and citizenship reviews. Not prosecute criminals, and then also maybe strip citizenship and deport people. Efficient. Trump has already ended legal protections for Somalis in Minnesota. He called the state a hub of fraudulent money laundering activity. He said Somali Americans come from hell. Great quote from our president, and that they contribute nothing and should go back to where they came from. He called Representative Ilhan Omar garbage and said her friends are garbage. Representative Omar, who is a U.S. citizen and a sitting member of Congress, has reported that ICE agents are pulling her constituents off of the streets, and that her own son was questioned, and that she's being forced to address questions about her own immigration status. She's called Trump's immigration policy geared towards this sort of white supremacist view of what America should be. She worries that we are not even at the worst part yet, and there's probably more to come, and she's probably right. I think it's a bit of an understatement, probably. So here's where we're at. Real crimes were committed by some people. A Republican caucus directed a 23-year-old prankster from YouTube to specific locations to harass people on camera. He filmed empty buildings and made accusations without real verification. The video got amplified by the vice president, the richest man on earth, and the FBI director, and a guy whose entire career is just straight nepotism. And federal resources got deployed. And now an entire community, somewhere between 61,000 and 108,000 people, about 1 to 2% of Minnesota's population, 58% of whom were born in the U.S., is living under a cloud of suspicion. It's all super measured, all very proportional. Meanwhile, Philip Esmorformis ran one of the largest healthcare fraud schemes in American history. The Department of Justice described it as involving over $1.3 billion in false claims to Medicare and Medicaid, one of the largest healthcare fraud cases in the DOJ history. He owned nursing homes and assisted livings. Excuse me, we got the ball. And used them to systemically defraud the government through kickbacks, bogus admissions, and billing for services that were never provided or medically unnecessary. Money meant to care for the elderly and disabled Americans. A federal jury convicted him in 2019 on 20 counts. Fraud, kickbacks, bribery, money laundering, obstruction of justice. He was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. But then Donald Trump commuted his sentence in December 2020. He served 4.5 years. In 2024, he pleaded guilty to one count of conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud as part of a deal. The other counts got dropped. He was sentenced to time served. He never went back to prison. So 1.3 billion stolen, 20-year sentence, 4.5 years served, free, no viral videos, no FBI director statements within 48 hours, no surge of federal resources, no deportation threats, no denaturalization proceedings, no Republican caucuses directing YouTubers to harass people at nursing homes, at his nursing homes, no presidential statements about how people come from hell, people like him come from hell or contribute nothing, no vice president sharing his story, no Elon Musk, no Don Jr. primetime specials, just mercy, just leniency, just walking out the door and going home. It's interesting how that works. Somali families in Minnesota, most of whom have committed zero crimes, are raising children, they're working jobs, they're paying taxes, and they're also getting their doors knocked on and harassed on camera by a 23-year-old whose previous work includes tricking people into fake Justin Bieber auditions. They're facing citizenship questions, and they're watching ICE pull people off the streets and beat pregnant women on the ground. Meanwhile, a man who stole over $1 billion is living his life free, having served less time than it takes to get a bachelor's degree. The disproportion is remarkable, almost like that's the whole point. Representative Omar is also under scrutiny now because her husband's venture capital firm is worth between $5 million and $25 million, and their net worth is reportedly surged 3,500% in 1 year. The firm scrubbed officer details from its website after questions arose. Omar hasn't been accused of any wrongdoing, but the optics are being used to suggest corruption, to imply that she's connected to fraud schemes, and to add fuel to the narrative. So a sitting member of Congress whose husband runs a legal venture capital firm is treated as more suspicious than a man who literally stole over $1 billion and got his sentence computed. Perfectly logical system we have here. The tell is always who gets mercy and who gets hunched, which investigations get coordinated with political operatives and amplified by power brokers and result in citizenship reviews, which ones result in reduced charges and time served. A 23-year-old prank YouTuber harassing people gets 116 million views, an FBI response within 48 hours, and the guy who stole $1.3 billion walks free after 4 years. But sure, the real problem is a daycare center in Minneapolis, and definitely not the whole system that lets wealthy white fraudsters serve bachelor's degree length sentences for billion-dollar thefts, while JD Vance, Elon Musk, Kash Patel, and Don Jr. coordinate to send YouTubers to harass immigrants on camera. That's the part. It's working exactly as intended. And if this video has expanded your perspective, please subscribe, hype this video. We can only combat voices like that by lifting up voices on the left, and it costs you nothing. So see you on the